The evercade has a pretty extensive library with some really difficult games. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but I wanted to talk about some of the games that I feel are the hardest that I've played and are worth a look if you're trying to give yourself high blood pressure. Let's start with the most obvious one. Battletoads is widely known as the hardest game of all time, so it's a natural fit to be on this list. I've beaten this game on original hardware, and it definitely is difficult. I don't think it's the hardest game ever made, but it is unbelievably tough, and beating it without save states is really difficult to do. It is a fantastic game that came out late in the lifespan of the NES. The graphics are top notch, the soundtrack is one of the best on the system in my opinion. It's one of the best of all time actually. Every level has incredibly rocky music, even the pause music is awesome, which is, not something you get very often. The graphics are equally good and really push the NES hardware to its limits, but the gameplay is where it shines. The first level starts off as a pretty simple beat 'em up, with cool characters that get exaggerated fists and feet when they finish their opponents, but that is where the simplicity ends. The game is broken up into 12 levels, every one of them is something different. Most people have seen the first 3. The third level is the infamous turbo tunnel where most players just stop. Believe it or not, it gets even more difficult. In fact, people who have finished this game will tell you the turbo tunnel is one of the easiest levels of the game. Later levels have you riding all sorts of vehicles from a surfboard to a little rocket ship, and the platforming challenges just get insane. I would also say that this game has the hardest water level of all time. It's pretty late in the game, but anyone who's made that far knows how ludicrously difficult it is. The variety in this game is unmatched though. Each of the game's levels introduce something new and fun, and it really is a blast seeing everything the game has to offer and the bragging rights that come with finally being able to beat it. Karnov on the NES is one of those games I rented as a kid and really fell in love with. It's a fun platform with a fire-breathing protagonist and a really cool item system that was unique. I never really played the arcade version much. I don't even think I knew it existed as a kid, so I was really excited to check it out when it was announced for the evercade. The premise of the game is pretty similar. You play as fire-breathing Karnov, who attacks by spitting fire and has a large inventory of items you get that scroll across the bottom of the screen. There's improved graphics and sound over the NES version, and a similar look. The difficulty here, though, is the very definition of quarter stealing. In all the reviews of this game, they talk about how difficult it is, but I had no idea just how brutal it was until I started playing. I feel like this is one of those games that you literally can't play for 10 seconds without dying. There are checkpoints, so you also can't quarter feed your way to victory. Some of these checkpoints lead you to start in some horrific positions, with enemies just waiting to kill you the second you spawn. I was dying a ton. In the beginning, I felt like my deaths were meaningful. I would die, learn how it works, make some progress, and repeat, but it just got too hard too fast. Everything kills you in one hit, so you have zero margin of error, and everything just moves faster than you do. You don't have the tools necessary to dodge these attacks, and your attacks sometimes feel like they take 10 million hits to kill an enemy. And of course, one wrong move, you're dead and back to the checkpoint. There were some times where I would just spawn and die within like 3 seconds, just repeat and repeat and repeat. I would say you could abuse save states, but I don't even think that's the case. Even when I tried that, I still couldn't make any progress. This game was one of the hardest I've ever played, so much so that it simply was not fun. I actually don't understand how anyone called Battletoads the hardest game ever made when this game exists. Our next game is Art of Fighting 2. SNK has made some really difficult fighting games over the years, particularly with their selection of final bosses, which are renowned for being some of the most obscene things to ever grace a fighting game. But Art of Fighting 2 gets a special mention for just being difficult throughout the entire game. As a kid, I used to play this a ton. I was amazing at it. I could easily beat the game most times without even losing a single round. And then I get to square off against Geese Howard, the hidden final boss. But that was over 30 years ago, and the 14-year-old version of me would just shake his head in disgust watching me play the game now. Seriously, I forgot how difficult this game was. Or maybe I just played so many fighting games back then. When I was young, I never realized it. Revisiting it, I got my butt handed to me over and over again. Although I was able to finish it without save states, I used a lot of credits to get there. But it's such a fun game. The combat is much more deliberate than a lot of modern fighting games. There are some limited combos, but this game is not about large combo strings. It's about learning the intricacies of your character and picking your spots to do damage. You also have to spend some time getting to know how the AI works. They change their attack patterns depending on whether or not they have spirit meter, and you can really exploit some of their attacks once you learn how they work. And this is the key to success. Once you get it all down, it's not as hard as it initially appears, but it's going to take you a while to figure it all out. It's a great game though, with great graphics, and I will still stand by and say that it is the greatest sound effects in every fighting game ever. Just be prepared to lose a lot before you figure it all out. And here it is. If you watch my channel regularly, you know that I never miss a chance to talk about Double Dragon 3 on the NES. It is one of my all-time favorite games, and it is renowned as one of the hardest games on the system, which is quite an accomplishment given how difficult games were on the NES. I try to be objective on my list sometimes. I personally don't see this game as difficult at all. I've done a no spin kick run on my channel, and I just played it so much that most of the game I just kind of sleep through and only struggle a little bit on the final level, but the entire internet can't be wrong. This could be a pretty tough game if you haven't been playing it for 35 years like I have. It starts you off with only one life, so there's a brutal difficulty curve to kick things off. You don't get any continues at the start either, and the enemies attack you relentlessly. They do their best to surround and tag team you at all times, and once they knock you down, they will hover around you and punch you as you get up, almost always leading to additional damage. But it's also just such an incredibly fun game. The moveset is fantastic, and as you play, you unlock extra characters, which serve as extra lives as well as a continue. These characters are fantastic. Not only do they add variety to the gameplay, but they are really strong in their own right. Learning to play with all three characters will make this game so much easier. They each have their own life bar, so as you unlock new characters, you can switch between them. Properly managing your characters and knowing which of them are good against which enemies can make all the difference in the world. I just love this game, which is why I talk about it every chance I get. It definitely gets a bad rap though, maybe because of the difficulty, maybe because people don't understand it, or maybe I just have bad taste in games. But regardless of your thoughts, I think most people would agree it does belong on a list of hardest evercade games. There are a lot of different kinds of hard games. I've covered a few on this episode, and there are hard games, and then there are cheap games like Karnov, and then there's Truxton, which is, I think, the hardest game I've ever played in my life. I don't know how anyone in the world could beat this game. It's a shmup. I'm not good at shmups. I get that. There's just a lot of things about shmups that make them harder. Like, for example, you power up your ship, you die, and now you're really weak and you're in a much harder part of the game. But Truxton takes all these things to an unbelievably difficult level. So, in every shmup, you get power-ups. Truxton's no different. These little flying peas come and you collect them to power up your gun. The problem is you need to collect 5 before your gun powers up at all. And they don't appear that frequently. Now when you die, you keep them, so if you die with 3 and then you respawn, you still have 3 and you only need to collect 2 more to upgrade your weapon. But your weapon when you die always resets back to the beginning. So then what happens is you get into these ridiculous loops. Usually when you respawn, there's a 1p, but then what happens is you wind up having to die 5 times before you have a powered up gun, and you only get to the next level before you die again. It is utterly ridiculous. To make matters worse, there's bullet sponges, but I've never seen bullet sponges the way Truxton does it. When you run into the game's bosses, eventually they just fly away. And that's the thing, I'm not good at shmups, and I have to say, the first time I tried to play through this game, I think I save stated like hundreds of times to beat anything, okay? But you get to the bosses, and you just keep shooting them and they don't die. You get these little fire marks that appear in them that show that they're taking damage, but literally, I don't even think I was able to kill a boss. I think in order to do it, you need to have a powered up weapon. You combine all this together, and then you throw in ridiculous amounts of enemies, bullet hell patterns. I think this game is impossible. I literally couldn't beat it, and I was doing the thing where I was saving every 5 seconds. And even with that, I still couldn't beat it. It is the hardest game I have ever seen. Definitely the hardest on Evercade, but I actually can't think of a game I've ever played that's more difficult than the arcade version of Truxton.